So now Sri Rudra Vikrama Srivastava ji, who is a freelancer historical researcher, who is now sensational all around the country for bringing out an inscription in Prayagraj, is going to talk about history of Ramayana as a living tradition in the royal culture. He is a very young researcher, but has shot into fame now because of his path-breaking research in many aspects. He's rigorous in his professional archaeological approach into these topics, and is rigorously countering misunderstandings of the history of living tradition of Ramayana in the country. And he's showing through inscriptions that the living tradition of Ramayana was there in the royal culture from a very long time. Over to you, Sri Rudra Vikrama Srivastava.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me here. And it's always a pleasure attending such a seminar with such eminent speakers. And in the previous seminar itself, in the previous symposium on Jatras, also I had presented a topic on related to Ramayana. And in that, my topic was the first record of Raghav Yatra as evidence from a newly discovered inscription from Prayagraj that I found in December 2024. And it's a pleasant coincidence that this symposium itself is all about the living tradition of Ramayana. So a little bit about my background. I've been researching epigraphical records belonging to the early medieval period from the Vindhyan region, basically southern Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, that is the more or less the Bundelkhand area. So this region actually has a lot of early medieval temples and also Gupta temples, which haven't been studied. And on one of such sites, I found the oldest epigraphical record of a Ram temple, which also happened to be the only record of Raghav Yatra. So since then, that is in December 2024, I have embarked upon a journey to study the archaeology of Ramayana. And,
sorry to interrupt, Sri Rudra Vikram. Can you please switch on your video, please?
Sir, actually, I'm not in the right environment to switch on the video. Is my presentation visible? Is my PPT visible?
PPT is visible. Yes.
Okay. Okay, sir. So the archaeology of Ramayana has two broad issues. First is the historicity of the events of Ramayana themselves. And this topic in particular had been taken up by Professor B.B. Lal, one of the most eminent archaeologists in post-independence India. And he has dug up several sites associated with Ramayana and tried to establish the historicity of the events of the sites and the overall picture of Ramayana itself. And the second issue that is associated with Ramayana is the antiquity and popularity of Ram as a deity and his worship. And very surprisingly, and unfortunately, in my opinion, this issue has not been discussed in any sort of detail, and at least not to the extent it should have been, because so far all the studies regarding the antiquity and the history of the tradition of Ram worship have limited mostly themselves to Ayodhya, a very narrow perspective. And in this scenario, many of the other sites that are associated with Ramayana have been neglected. So in this topic, I'm going to talk about history of Ramayana as a living tradition in the royal culture, and particularly kings embodying themselves as a divine manifestation of the King Ram himself. So what I'm going to discuss is not just the overall worship of Ram as a deity by kings or the members of the royal family, but in this talk, I'll show you how the kings of old saw themselves as the divine manifestation of Lord Ram himself. And this is a very unique aspect because not many deities have been projected in this way historically. So moving on. So first, I would like to discuss some of the early depictions of Ram in archaeological sources. So while panels ascribed to Ramayana are have been found in BC era. But in my opinion, the oldest undoubted depiction of Ram in any archaeological source is perhaps this coin that you can see on the screen on the right side. It is a copper coin that belongs to the reign of Kushan king Huvishk around the 2nd century CE. And this coin was found in northwestern Pakistan. And this is a very interesting coin. It doesn't really mention the name Ram, but from the context we are sure that it is for sure a depiction of Lord Ram. On one of the sides, the king Huvishk himself is depicted sitting on an elephant. On the other side, we have this deity holding a bow and an arrow, very, very reminiscent of the modern depiction of Ram, of Kodandaram, in which he is holding a bow and arrow, and in the way he is worshipped today. And on the right side, to the right of the bow, there is a legend in Kharoshthi script which reads Yodha Vade. Now, Yodha Vade may be a spelling of Yodhapati or Yuddhavant, both of which mean the foremost among the warriors or the lord of the warriors. And in Ramayana itself, Ram has been mentioned as the lord of warriors on many instances. So Ram has many different aspects. One of the major aspects that is worshipped today is him being the Maryada Purushottam, or the ethical, or an ethical man who abides by all the rules and all the morals and everything. And the second, which was the more important aspect historically, is him being a warrior. He was not just a moral man who abided by all the rules, but he was also a great warrior, and particularly the greatest archer of his times. And if we look at Hindu texts, for instance, the Dhanurved part of the Agni Puran, it mentions that among all the sorts of battles, the one that involves archery is the best. So historically, archery, before the use of modern weaponry, archery was regarded as the best of all weapons, and because of that, Ram's association with archery, he was regarded as the best warrior. And similarly, from the same area in northwestern Pakistan, that is Pakistan occupied Kashmir, we have a seal from the 3rd century CE, which mentions the legend Shri Sitaram. And this is very interesting, which shows that the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent had a very ancient tradition of Ram worship, as evidenced by archaeological records. And interestingly, there is even today a mountain on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region, which today is called Sakram, Mount Sakram. So scholars believe that the original name of the mountain was Sitaram, and the word Sakram is actually a corruption of the word Sitaram. And the local pre-Islamic tribes of those regions also had many folk deities and folk heroes, most of which were based on our own Puranic and epic heroes. For instance, the pre-Islamic tribals of Nuristan have a folk hero named Arom, which scholars believe is none other than Ram. Similarly, they also have legends based on Mahabharata and other characters of the Purana. So in this region, it is very clear that Ram worship was very prevalent, and one of the earliest depictions of Ram as an archer is to be found in the Kushana coin from this area. Now, moving on closer to our geography, I would like to discuss some early examples of mentions of Lord Ram in epigraphy. Perhaps the earliest mention within within the boundaries of India of Ram is the Nashik Prashasti of Gautami Putra Satkarni. Now here, Ram is not merely a deity. Now we are seeing the development of kings embodying Ram himself. So this is one of the early inscriptions which paints such a picture. So here the king Gautami Putra Satkarni is compared to the heroes of both the Yaduvansh and the Raghuvansh, or the Suryavansh. Now in the first set, he is compared to Ram, or that is Balram, or then Keshav, Arjun, and Bhim. And then in the second line, he is compared to Nabhag, Nahush, Janmejay, Sagar, and Ram. Here Ram clearly is that of Suryavansh, that is Ramchandra. And then moving on, we have another inscription of the greatest king of the Gupta dynasty, that is Samudragupta, from the 4th century CE, in which he is compared to Raghav in his prowess. So we are already seeing that Ram is gaining popularity as among the royals who are styling themselves after this divine hero. Now, the greatest evidence of kings wholly embodying this divine hero, that is Lord Ram, comes from the reign of Chandragupta II of the Gupta dynasty, who was the son of Samudragupta. Now, to my surprise, this is a very important aspect that is perhaps being discussed in a public forum for the first time. Now, in Gupta coins, one of the most common types is the archer type coin, in which the king is depicted as holding a bow and arrow, which is very, very reminiscent of Kodandram, as we have seen previously in the Kushan coin, which is how Ram is depicted in modern times. But to my surprise, nobody has made this connection so far. Now, there is absolutely no discussion on what was the inspiration behind such a depiction in such early times. And there is absolutely nothing that people have discussed. However, in my opinion, there is some evidence to suggest that this archer type imagery was inspired by none other than Ram. And the kings wholly embodied this deity. Now, the only discussion regarding this that I could find was by a scholar named Brajdulal Chattopadhyay, who was responding to Pollock on Ram as an inspiration for the archer imagery. Now, in one of his sensational papers, or rather scandalous papers, Pollock had discussed that Ram was used as an agent of othering the Muslims in very later times, in very late medieval periods, and after that, and also in modern times, the 19th century. So, in one of his arguments, he says that there were propaganda posters that were made, and kings were shown as Ram and whatever and whatnot. So Brashdulal Chattopadhyay actually makes a very rhetorical question. He doesn't really inquire it in any sort of serious academic way, but he makes sort of a rhetorical question that if propaganda posters or very later depictions of kings as archer can be taken as inspiration for from Ram, then why don't we take the example of archer type coins of the Gupta kings as being inspired by? Now, during the Gupta era, there were several different types of coins that were popular. However, during the reign of Chandragupta II, who was the son of Samudragupta, the main type of coin that he issued was the archer type. Although a few examples before his reign are known, but they were not as common. Now, in my opinion, after studying all the epigraphical records and all the context behind this, I am of the opinion that this imagery was very likely inspired by Ram to depict the king as a living embodiment of the deity. Now, for the evidence, I would like to discuss the Ashwamedh type coin of the Guptas, which shows an influence from Ramayana. Now, in the Ashwamedh type coin, the sacrificial yoke, or the pole on which the horse is tied to which for sacrificing. Now, this pole has a decoration of cloth, which is not seen in earlier yupas. The earliest mention of such a decoration in sacrificial yupas is found in Ramayana. So, in my opinion, this is a very direct evidence of coinage being inspired by Ramayana. So, why not? Why can't we see this connection between the archer type coin and the imagery of Ram? Now, moreover, we also need to look at the personal devotion and personal religious affiliations of the members of the Gupta family. Now, as previously mentioned, Chandragupta II's father himself has compared him to Ram or Raghav in his Aaron Prashasti. Then, similarly, the daughter of Chandragupta II, Prabhavati Gupta, who was born in Patna but later married to the Vakataka dynasty in Maharashtra, she was a very ardent devotee of Ram, and she actually established a shrine at Ramtek in Nagpur, where she used to worship the footprints or the Padchin of this deity. And interestingly, Ramtek in Nagpur is believed to be one of the sites where Lord Ram camped. So this also shows that members of the Gupta royal family were developing sites associated with Ram as pilgrimage spots in which they were themselves worshipping this deity. So it's very clear that members of this family were ardent devotees of this deity. And moreover, in all of their inscriptions, Gupta rulers, their own personal religion is mentioned as Bhagavat. They have all called themselves Param Bhagavat. And with this evidence, we are sure that they were none other than Ram worshippers. Even in Bhagavatism, they were not worshippers of other forms of or other avatars of Vishnu, but particularly Ram. So this is a very strong argument that kings were already seeing themselves as the embodiment of Ram. Moreover, we also need to see why this particular imagery of archer was chosen. Now, from the times of Guptas themselves, there are two more temples, which are although not, we are not sure whether these temples refer directly to Ram, but I think the overall context may offer some clue. So one temple in Mandsaur from the time of Kumar Gupta, that is who was the son of Chandragupta II, is dedicated to Lord Vishnu in the name of Shangdhar or Shangir. Now, Shang also means bow. It is the bow of Lord Vishnu. And the word Shangdhar is also used as a synonym for Vishnu and also for his avatars. Now, Shangdhar is not really exclusive to Ram. It has been used for other avatars of Vishnu. But among all the avatars, the primary association of bow and arrow is with Lord Ram. Similarly, we also have another temple of Shangdhar from Bhitari in Ghazipur, Uttar Pradesh. And here also Skandgupta, the grandson of Chandragupta II, built a temple for Shangin or Shangdhar. And interestingly, Skandgupta also built a temple for Ram at Gadhwa in Prayagraj. Now, this is the exact site where I have discovered the Chandela inscription, which records the construction of a Ram temple. So here the Gupta inscription says that the footprints of Chitrakoot Swami. Now, Chitrakoot, the entire religious importance of this place is because of Lord Ram. So Chitrakoot Swami clearly refers to Ram. So again, this paints a picture of a very strong tradition of Ram worship within this family. So this is very interesting to note that so far nobody has made the connection between the archetype imagery of Gupta kings with Ram worship, and we are perhaps the first people to point this out with a great degree of confidence. Now, moving on, as we have seen, we have already established a very strong tradition of Ram worship, so much so that the kings were themselves seen as an embodiment of this deity. But what about the later periods? Now, there is a little bit of gap after Gupta period and the early medieval period. And this may be because there haven't been as many explorations or as much research as there should have been. However, a few very interesting points need to be noted in this regard. One of them is the epithet of Ramchandra. Now, to distinguish Lord Ram, that is the son of Dashrath, from other Ramas that are Parshuram and Balram, the suffix Chandra is often added to the name of Ram, which refers specifically to Ram Dashrathi or the Suryavanshi Ram. Now, why is this suffix used? Nobody has satisfactorily explained this. However, my co-author in the paper about the newly discovered Ram temple inscription, he has made some very fascinating observations. So the word Chandra is specifically used to refer to kings and to honor them. So out of the three Ramas, only Lord Ram was the king. And interestingly, the oldest reference to this word, the oldest epigraphical mention of the word Ramchandra as a whole, is actually found in a 6th or 7th century inscription that is from the post-Gupta era. So we are seeing that the image of Ram as an ideal king was already taking shape by this period. And this whole image at its peak is seen in the early medieval era. Now, the inscription that I found in Prayagraj belongs to the 11th century, to the reign of the great Chandela king Kirtivarman. For context, the Chandela dynasty is the same dynasty which built the magnificent temples of Khajuraho, and they ruled a vast area of central India for nearly 5 or 6 centuries. So, Kirtivarman Chandel of this dynasty is credited with reviving the dynasty from certain death after their clash with the Kalachuris. So this king Kirtivarman is actually referred to as Ramachandra in one of the inscriptions. This inscription was found in Devgarh in Lalitpur district in Uttar Pradesh. Here it is said that Lord Ram or Ramachandra had entered the body of Kirtivarman, and the allusion is made to the battle between the Chandelas and Kalachuris. And it is said that through his divine powers, Kirtivarman defeated all of his enemies, and he was also assisted by his prime minister and whatnot. So we are clearly seeing that the idea of Ram as an ideal, as a divine king who was indistinct from the ruling king, was very much established by this period. And interestingly, the new inscription that I have found from Prayagraj also seems to be a commemorative inscription. Now, this temple in Prayagraj was built in the area that was previously ruled by Kalchuris. And the main object of the inscription is to record the establishment of a Ram shrine on the Ekadashi of Chaitra, which, according to our primary or new research, might be the original date of Lord Rama's coronation. But the last part of the inscription also commemorates the victory of Chandelas over Kalchuris. And so, in a way, Ram is being invoked again and again in battles also. The warrior aspect of Ram has become primary in this context. And one of the points that some scholars like Pollock have raised, that Rama as the warrior was invoked only against Milechhas or non-Hindu kings. But again, we are seeing this is not true, because Rama was an ideal warrior. So no matter who the enemy is there in front, it doesn't matter, because the king, being the embodiment of Ram, abided by truth and justice, and did what was necessary. So again, in this context, if we see, there is no angle of any othering of Muslims as alleged by Polo. Then the second oldest inscription that was previously considered the oldest, before our discovery, the oldest inscription of a Ram temple, comes from a town in Chhattisgarh called Rajim. Now, Rajim is also believed to be one of the campsites of Ram during his exile. Here also we see the same pattern. The temple was issued by a migrant from Ayodhya, who later became the feudatory of the local Kalachuri king. And in this inscription also, Lord Ram is invoked as a warrior. And interestingly, the archer imagery of Ram is invoked directly. So it is, this inscription says that Jasanand, who is the issuer of the temple and who was the feudatory of Kalachuris, defeated other Kshatriyas like Kshatriya Ram. And then goes on to say that he also defeated the local tribals and established the foothold of the Kalachuris, that is his overlords, firmly in the area. So again and again, we are seeing that Ram is being invoked as a warrior and equated with the issuer of these inscriptions, mostly kings and sometimes their feudatories also. Then the third inscription is also third oldest inscription of a Ram temple, which also comes from the reign of the Kalachuris. This time from the Rewa district in Madhya Pradesh. It also says the same thing. Here, a feudatory of the Kalachuri, local Kalachuri king, who is named Malayasim, he defeated a rebel named Sallakshan. And in this inscription, it says that the feudatory Malayasim showered his enemies with arrows like Ram, the son of Dashrath. So again and again, we are seeing the primary aspect of Ram being invoked is the archer and a warrior. So with these three examples, which are the which if we go by Pollock's claims that there were no Ram temples earlier, which I don't think is accurate. But even if I were to be the devil's advocate, and if we consider that these are the three oldest examples of Ram temple, so this clearly goes against the idea that Ram became popular only as an opposition to foreign rule. We are seeing that he already had become an ideal by the Gupta era, and the trend continued till the early medieval period. Now, in this light, it would also be great to look at some literature from the period other than the archaeological sources. So one very interesting example comes from Bengal from around the 11th century, 12th century, 11th or 12th century. It belongs to the reign of the Palas. So a text named Ramcharit or a drama was composed by a Bengali playwright named Sandhyakar Nandi, who was actually a minister of the local Pala king named Rampal. Now, this text also shows the same pattern that we are seeing in inscriptions. The text Ramacharit is essentially inspired by the Ramayana, and it is written in double entendre, or a language that involves double meaning, which simultaneously refers to the king Rampal, who is obviously named after the incarnation of Vishnu and the son of Dashrath, Lord Ram. And this text narrates the story of the life of Ram, Lord Ram, and the king Rampal simultaneously. So again, the same pattern is here. We are seeing that the king is directly being equated to Ram. And similarly, there is another king of the Kalachuri dynasty that who lived sometime in the 8th or 9th century, or maybe earlier. He is not precisely dated. So he also, being a king, he himself wrote a text on Ram, a play on Ram known as Udattaraga. So we are seeing that kings were also themselves writing such texts, very important texts, and equating themselves with Ram. So with this, I would say some concluding remarks I would like to make before I finish my talk. So all in all, with all the evidence that I have presented so far, it is very clear that Ram was very much a living entity for the kings of old, and he was merely not merely just a distant ancestor in case of Suryavansh, or deity disconnected from the devotee. He very much embodied the ideal, and the kings were styling themselves after. And the living tradition, although it was popularized or increased in popularity after the Bhakti period, but the roots go well into the Gupta period or even earlier. And with this, I conclude my talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rudra Vikramaji. Every time you are coming up with very interesting historical topics, historical analysis. You being young is a great promise to all of us that we are going to have a wonderful future in the historical research, which is useful for countering